if you're getting broken into or your house is getting robbed in LA or there's a home invasion, you are fucked. There is nobody coming. Unless you live in Santa Monica and you have Santa Monica PD or one of the other cities that has their own PD. Welcome to the Dirt Podcasts. I'm Miles Solomon. Every week I share my perspective on commercial real estate and the business of trading dirt. Let's get into it.
Nothing in this podcast is legal, tax, or investment advice. It's for entertainment only, loosely inspired by real estate, and any resemblance to actual people, deals, or outcomes is accidental or aggressively fictionalized. Talk to your attorney, CPA, and advisors before acting on anything you hear.
Quick update on a couple of my ongoing battles here and I guess things I'm working on. I mentioned in the last episode that I'm fired up working on a CRM that I've been working on for a few years. Last week, I used Claude AI to vibe code, which I hate that word, but I'm told that's what it is. So basically, you can create actual programming you can do it through chat, but Claude is a lot better. So I had a few different kind of test runs on things that I was working on. And I was actually using Python. So I learned how to use Python. It took me about 3 hours of downloading and re-downloading just to install the app or the language or whatever the fuck it is. But in any case, I got it working, and you basically give the AI instructions on what you're trying to do, and it creates the actual code, which you put into like your Windows computer command line, and then it actually triggers the code. So in this case, I was trying to modify these giant Excel sheets with thousands of owners, contact information, and building information, and I was trying to do it in bulk. So let me think. One of the things that I did was I needed to get the GPS latitude and longitude. So long story short, I created like a script that I could run that would pull from Google's API, and it would basically, based on the address of the property, it would give me the latitude and the longitude. It would put that into the Excel sheet and then give me like a finished version. It's some real nerd shit. I tried to learn it, 10 years ago. I think I wasn't even trying that. I was trying HTML and CSS, and I sucked at both of them. And I'm glad that I just stopped doing it, because turns out, as my buddy Case, shout out Case, my buddy Case said, the nerds have programmed their way out of a job when you have people like me that are able to create apps. So, I'm glad I didn't learn that, because it turns out you don't even need to. So when I'm a tech billionaire, I'll look back at this moment when I first learned Python. I still don't even know what it is. I just somehow can use it. But apparently that's the world we live in now. You don't actually have to understand anything to just make things happen. Inspirational stuff, really. Feel terrible for our new generation. Although I think I read an article the other day saying that, and I never knew this, that apparently Gen Z, Gen Z, doesn't know how to really use computers, which is fucking crazy to me. But the article was talking about how Gen Z's competency with computers is really poor, especially with programs like Outlook and Excel and all that, because they're not really using it in school, and 95% of what they're doing is on their phone, which I think is pretty funny. I always assumed that they were just little technology babies, but suck it. Turns out millennials still got something going for us. So in any case, learning how to vibe code, been working on this CRM that I've been building. My entire philosophy with it is quality over quantity. I want everything to work. I want to be able to contact people directly and know that they're the correct owners, that their numbers are verified, no dead numbers. So I'd rather have a lot less information and have it all be really high quality than have a shitload of information that's not correct, which is what we currently have. So been working on that. Also been working on this stupid lawsuit. My poor historic garage that had to be demolished, 10 months ago or a year ago by now. And the travesty that was, and how the city issued all the permits. I talked about this in the Alex Jones episode, but long story short, I had a garage built in 1950. It collapsed under the weight of its own shittiness, and so we had to do an emergency demolition, I think is what we were calling it in our letter. In any case, we got caught by the city for apparently not getting the right permits. They say I didn't pull any permits. I don't recall. But in any case, we got new permits, and we framed it, and we called for our inspection, and the inspector came, and he said, "You guys are fucked. You should have never done this. This wasn't supposed to pass through your permitting," yada, yada, basically saying that because we were trying to use the state, well, we're not trying, we used the state ADU program. They said that it never should have passed through historic planning. They revoked our permits after we spent, $100,000 plus. I say we, but it's me. I spent $100,000 plus, and then they said that I had no valid permits. We sued them under this thing called writ mandamus, which is basically when you have, and unfortunately in this country of bureaucrats now, you have a lot of them. When you have bureaucrats or government agencies that are supposed to do something that's non-discretionary and they fail or refuse to do it, there's this Latin term called writ mandamus, and you file a lawsuit against whatever the agency is. And if you win it, the court basically forces, it's like going to the principal's office. The court forces the agency or the individual to do the thing that they're supposed to do. So we've been doing, we sued them, 3 months ago. I sued them 3 months ago. They filed to revoke the remaining permits because I had gone back. I'd gotten a modified permit that they approved. They came back and tried to revoke that as well. So I filed a restraining order against LA City. A restraining order is basically, you always think about it with like domestic violence and stuff, but a restraining order is just to prevent someone from doing something, or an agency, or whatever. It could be an agency, an individual, company, whatever it is, but it's to prevent an action. And again, it's the court preventing an action. So the writ mandamus is the court forcing an action, and a restraining order is the court preventing an action. So we filed a restraining order. My attorney went in front of the judge, said, "Mr. Solomon's a good, upstanding citizen. He cares a lot about his historic community. He's just trying to build an ADU and house the homeless and all the other things that I care so much about." And the judge said, "Sorry, we're not going to prevent them from pulling the permits. You can add it to your damages claim. We're denying that. And you need to go back and fully cure your lawsuit." And the concept, not to get too legal, but the concept of curing, I'm sure it exists in a lot of legal stuff, but in the context of writ mandamus, your case has to be fully cured, meaning you've exhausted all bureaucratic possibilities. So we went back and literally just submitted the exact same plans, the exact same already approved permits to the historic people, and said, "Okay, if you guys are saying that you're not using anything discretionary, then here are the plans, approve or deny it." So recently, for the last few months, I send an email twice a week to the planner, the architect, the historic people, and my attorney saying, "Just checking in, when are we going to get an update?" And they just dragged their feet. We had another court conference, and judge said, "Well, we're going to push this out a couple months, give the city time to respond." And that's basically lawsuits 101 from what I've realized. I've been in a couple lawsuits at this point. Thankfully, no one's sued me yet, but I have sued a couple people over things that I think were justice, with a capital J. And so far, justice is literally just is just the two parties kind of bickering back and forth, the attorneys writing back and forth to each other, a shitload of just bureaucratic, like, filing paperwork, and it just takes forever. That's all it really is. It's just dragging it out. And if you're the plaintiff, you want to take them to court as quickly as possible. If you're the defendant, you want to drag it on as long as possible. and you just bleed each other for money as long as you can, and assuming both parties have equal amounts of money or enough money to support their side, you just keep going until you get in front of a judge finally. The judges, I'm convinced, are so backed up with cases that they just don't want to hear any cases, really. So they allow the parties to kind of just drag each other out. They want you to mediate. They want you to settle. They want to do everything in their power to not see the case in court. So that's what's going on there. Meanwhile, we've been managing our new apartment building, the building I've talked about a couple of times now that I bought with a few partners. And I volunteered, my assistant and I, should I say, and really it's all her, volunteered to be the property managers to get everything in place. And I own a couple houses, so I have an idea of property management and a couple industrial things. But as we are realizing, there is a lot to managing multifamily. There are endless requests. There are endless repairs, especially when you buy a stinking pile of a turd of a building like we did, that every single thing, I've never owned anything, not a car, not a piece of equipment, not a house, where every single thing that the owner has done to it, the previous owner, everything that they did was wrong. Every single thing. So we had a request from a tenant that she asked if a mushroom growing in the bathroom was normal. I'd like to inform everyone it is not. But it is normal if you're the previous owner and you never install a fan extraction fan to pull out wet air, and you've got a tiny window in this bathroom, then yeah, it's normal. So we've just been going through this list of just every freaking thing. And while it's a stinking pile of turd, and it's our stinking pile of a turd, it's, as Martha Stewart says, and I'm paraphrasing, the shittiest building on the best block. It's a really nice area, really nice street. It just so happens we have the worst building on it. But what's encouraging about that is there's room for growth. We can always be better, because literally every single building on the block is better than ours. So I find that inspiring, should I say, that we have so much room to grow. But I do like, we're back to dealing with like regular people problems for a change. Most of our deals, most of our client services are dealing with just really complicated, highly technical, legal, real estate or other things. And this is pretty simple. It's like, my toilet's clogged. I'm like, oh, I know how to do that. I could go over there. Things that are just straightforward and simple. So that part's a little bit refreshing. I think if you buy an apartment building, be prepared for that. If you're handy, you don't necessarily need to be handy, but you need to know what to look out for. And if you're dealing with like contractors and stuff, you need to know when the work they're doing is correct, when it's not correct, yada, yada. I've mentioned it before. You don't want to be getting educated by the sales guy. Worse than that, or maybe on the same level, you don't want to be getting educated by the contractor. I think any contractor, if for some reason a contractor listens to this, is going to highly resent a homeowner or a regular person pretending to be a contractor. I'm not saying that I'm a contractor. I'm not saying, but you just have to know enough about it to know who knows what they're doing and who doesn't know what they're doing. Like all things, it helps. So we've been dealing with those kind of issues, which actually have been a pleasant change. And then one of the big projects that I have that I've been managing for a couple of years is I've got a 7-acre industrial yard that I master leased through myself from an owner of a big piece of land that's getting entitled. And I have a bunch of different companies that basically rent space from me, and they pay me to park their stuff and keep it kind of secure. So we have like, camera systems and built a huge wall and that kind of thing. And relatively problem free, I would say. We've got like a firewood company that supplies firewood to different restaurants. We've got a studio that parks all their employees. We've got a trash company that parks its dumpsters, and a contracting company, like electrical contractor, that parks all their equipment. And then I've got a few friends that store stuff there, and my own collection of goods. So I think by comparison to the apartment building, the problems that we have at this yard are usually, there's not a lot of problems, but when we have them, they tend to be colossal. Where it's like there's a leaking water main and there's 1,000 gallons of water coming out, a minute, or things like that, where it's like slightly higher stakes, or because we can handle the security. And there's a couple people that have the alerts if someone's detected after a certain time, including me. So I think probably 4 or 5 times now I've gotten an alert at 2 or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. That there's a homeless dude walking that climbed over the 12-foot fence or climbed under it and is walking through the property. And my house is exactly 6.5 minutes going 100 miles an hour. So I've showed up in my robe, in my sweatpants with no shirt, all kinds of different arrangements at 3 or 4 a.m. With a Mossberg shotgun or, a handgun or whatever I have nearby. And then generally I'll have someone that meets me there within like 5 minutes of that. And then we walk through and find the guy and tell him to get the fuck off the property. And this is, keep in mind, we have 2 giant dogs there. Each of them is 150 pounds. But the way we have it configured is the dogs are kind of securing like half of it, but they can't get out of that section. So the last break-in we had actually was a homeless dude at 4 a.m. He took fireworks there. So he had a set of Roman candles, and he lit the Roman candles. He was in the section where the dogs are, and these are huge dogs that bark, and you don't want to get attacked by these dogs. And he was shooting Roman candles at the dogs at 4 a.m. Luckily, didn't hit any of them. I mean, they're pretty smart dogs, and he was pretty bad aim. But those are the kind of issues. And our lovely LAPD, I learned after the first 3 break-ins that they don't come. I think the first break-in, it was the same scenario, but I wasn't, really familiar with that. At this point, there has been at least 7 or 8 break-ins, I would say. The first one, we were a little fresh, a little green, and, I was dialing 911 on the way there, and I could see these guys trying to break into some shipping containers, and I call 911 and I put it on hold, or they put me on hold, and I left the car, went and confronted the guys, did the whole thing, came back about 30, 40 minutes later. I was still on hold. And just for the fuck of it, I stayed on hold. I was on hold for 2 hours and 20 minutes before I hung up. And then the second time I got through after, 45 minutes, because we had the guys trapped there and we wanted to press charges. And I got through. They said, okay. And then about an hour and a half later, I got a call back saying, hey, did you still want us to send officers? So that's 2 hours and change after the initial incident. And they're still asking us if we want someone to come. So I've come to the realization, if you're getting broken into, this is not hyperbole, I'm not joking. If you're getting broken into, or your house is getting robbed in LA, or there's a home invasion, you are fucked. There is nobody coming. Unless you live in Santa Monica and you have Santa Monica PD or one of the other cities that has their own PD, or you live in county and you have a sheriff Sheriff's a different story. Aside from that, you are fucked. And I'm not saying this just because they put you as like low priority because it's I'm talking, I didn't even connect with someone the 3 or 4 times I called for at least 45 minutes. So you're dead, your wife's dead, your children are dead. You need to have a gun. You need to know how to use the gun. You need to shoot with the gun, and you need to take the consequences later because no one's coming to your rescue in LA. I think that's a known fact, but usually what I see online is like when the police are coming or things, or like I don't know. I don't see that much of all the people that never get a hold of PD. So we don't even call LAPD anymore. We've had like 5 or 6 fires on that property. There's a section where we have probably 10 bums living there. We've been emailing with the city, we've been calling 311, trying to get these bums removed. But it's a small section right next to a road, and it's too narrow for us to get anything in. And anytime we fenced it, they cut the fence, and it's just a weird zone that we can't really secure. So I've been trying to get these homeless removed for 2 years now. Our local councilwoman, shout out Eunice Hernandez, I hate your guts, has refused to help. They sent a representative out to talk to me, and basically all he wanted to talk about is what other uses could we use put at our property besides industrial uses to make it look better, and nothing about why we met, which is regarding the homeless. So you're on your own, and they've had, I don't know, 5, 6 plus fires there. We don't even call LAPD anymore because they just don't come, or if they come, they don't do anything. So I don't necessarily blame LAPD. I think they're complicit, but it's primarily the councilmen and the mayor's fault that they won't prosecute, that they've decriminalized everything, that they no cash bond. You get released immediately. We've created an environment where the police are not incentivized to do much, or in a lot of cases, they feel like they're proverbially handcuffed. So in any case, whatever the reasons are, that's the reality. So I'll take a clogged toilet over a bum with Roman candles any day of the week. But those are the things you sign up for, and we make a lot of money to do it. So it is what it is. But aside from that, those kind of property management issues, the lawsuit, the ADU, whatever. In terms of actual brokerage, we've been cold calling as usual. We're doing that every day, no matter what. I'm doing that. And the guys I'm working with are helping me. We're always cold calling. So that goes without saying. I love cold calling. I think I read a Wall Street Journal article last weekend saying that cold calling's dead, and it was an interview with honestly, I think it was one of the guys from All In was saying that nobody should call me without an appointment, or, that it's, I think the quote was, a phone call to a stranger is like ringing the doorbell of a stranger or something. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, we spend every day calling people, and, not to toot my own horn, but like, how many highly paid professionals are calling people every day to give free advice? Because we're not cold calling saying, hey, do you want to sell? Hey, do you want to buy? We're just checking in. Do you want market information? You want evaluation? How can we help you with your property? How can we help you strategize? 99% of our calls have nothing to do with sales. And it takes a lot of time and energy. And, it's because we're building trust and demonstrating that we have value and knowledge. How many experts do that? Like, I don't feel bad about cold calling. I think that, the people that we get a hold of that realize what we're doing, they get immense value from it. Of course, you have people that are like answering. They're like, no, I'm on a do not call list. It's like, okay, no problem. But most of the people recognize that you're, providing value, and any questions they have, you'll answer. So yeah, the idea that cold calling's dead is ridiculous. But I'll do another episode about cold calling and how I do it and what I talk about. But meanwhile, know that while you're sleeping, I'm cold calling, and be afraid. I'm also negotiating a few big deals. So I'm negotiating a 7.5 acre deal, $15 million. Got a couple others, some leases, etc. And I'm reminded that patience is, of course, a virtue. Despite what all these YouTubers and TikTok deal makers and art of the deal people say, a lot of negotiating is taking time, taking pauses, being patient, and being silent. So this is particularly true when a property is, when there's a big spread between the buy and the ask. And the seller's expectations may be high and the buyer's expectations low. Both want to do a deal. There's no competing parties. That's when it gets really tricky in terms of how to play the deal and the psychology of the deal. You've got to be willing to go quite a long time without checking in, without updates, without any sense of urgency, because every time you contact, you're giving them the other side information about how you're thinking about the deal, information that you are thinking about the deal. So in deals with that particular context, and every deal needs to be negotiated differently. And I should do another episode about that, of how we negotiate different deals depending on what it is. But in deals where there's a big spread between the buy and the ask, whether that's in terms of pricing or terms of the deal on a contract, whatever it is, a lot of times you need to take a long time to give both parties time to think about things, to let the deal settle, to let the market. And again, it depends on which side of the deal you're representing, which way the market's going. To make it more concrete, I'll give you an example. So I think I mentioned before, we've been looking to buy a ranch for a year and a half now. And we've looked at a lot of different properties. And we decided, 6 months ago, that we would, and we is not the proverbial we, it's my girlfriend and I, have decided that for our first ranch, in an effort to not lose our minds or all our money, we'll start with something smaller. So when I first started, we were looking at like 800 acres, 1,000 acres, like crazy big ranches to do this dude ranch, yada, yada. Still considering that, but now we're looking more at like smaller stuff. So we've been negotiating on this one property that's 40 acres, and they want, I think they started at $1 million, then they dropped to 900 or 950, and now they're at 875. We offered them, I think our first offer was $585,000. We did that based on, we valued the property a few different ways. Yes, it's a low ball, and yes, I do love low balling, but it wasn't just that. It's the actual property, the improvements on the property are not permitted. It's got a road going up that is not paved, and this road goes up to about, I think, 8 properties. And when it rains, you can't go up to the property without being in like a little buggy. Even a 4x4 can't get up it because it's such a steep road, and it's dirt, not even rock. It's like actual dirt, and it's not fire compliant. So you can't build a house until that road's improved, and that road's several $1 million. So it's got a lot of bad things going for it. Good thing is it's absolutely beautiful. The owner did a good job of, these unpermitted shipping containers are really cool the way he built them out. He was like an artist. It's got septic. It's got a propane tank. It's got a well, and amazing views of like this valley. And this is up by Santa Ynez. So it's in a desirable area surrounded by big vineyards. So it's got a lot going for it, but it's also got a lot not going for it. So we offered $580,000. The agent was extremely I don't want to say pushy because she wasn't pushy. I know she wanted to get a deal done. She saw that, there was someone here that was viable. She came back like 2 days later and she said, the owner's countering at 825,000. I was like, okay, well, that is way too far. I guess there's nothing to talk about here. She goes, but I think I can get him to 725,000. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. We're just not willing to come up that much. So I stopped talking to her. I didn't follow up for any updates. I didn't, nothing. Every week she'd kind of send me an update. I'd do like a thumbs up or whatever, and that's it. And then about a month later, she called me and she said, hey, he's thinking about, we have another group that's coming to look at it. He's entertaining, more offers. I think he's willing to negotiate. I think there's a deal here. And I said, hey, we're really interested, but our price is where it's at, and we're also looking at other stuff. So, we're interested, but it is what it is in terms of pricing. So I didn't hear from her for a while, and then I got a call like last week, and she was saying the owner is super motivated. He wants to do a deal. Can we come up, 75,000? And I said, no. If he's super motivated, then we'll come up 620. We'll come up to 625,000. That's our best and final offer. But it takes a long time, and I told my girlfriend at the beginning of this that when you're dealing with something. Real estate's not liquid, right? We're not talking about stonks here. We're talking about highly illiquid, complicated. Demand is different and weird depending on the property. The transactions take a long time. Real estate is, especially when it's land and it's in tertiary markets, if there's a liquidity scale, it goes down the liquidity scale. It's a lot easier to sell an apartment building. Even that's tough right now, but to sell an apartment building in the center of LA than it is to sell land in, bumfuck wherever, obviously. And so with that, your buyer pool becomes more and more limited. So in negotiations like that, and there can be, a lot of parameters that create the same environment of the same type of negotiating technique and the same qualities that would require that negotiating technique. It could be a building, it could be a development site in LA, it could be, it doesn't necessarily need to be off in some random place. But in areas where you're dealing, or in properties where you're dealing with like highly illiquid, very small buyer pool transactions, the negotiations have to be really slow and patient, and you have to be really strategic and careful about how you're doing it. You can't let your emotion or your desire to get a deal done get in the way, whether you're a broker or whether you're a principal. And so I think there's a lot of things like that it's easy to forget, that I remind myself, and that's one of the qualities I've been practicing lately, especially with this little deal, but also with others. Let me know what other topics you'd like to hear about or talk about. Otherwise, I'm going to keep ranting.